The sparrow's not worried about tomorrow or the troubles to come. The lily's not thinking about the seasons, the drought or the flood. The tree that's planted by the water isn't fazed by the fire. So why should I be? 'Cause you take good care of me. You take good care of me. You know what I need before I even ask a thing. And you hold me in your hands with the kindness that never ends. I'm carried in your love no matter what the future brings. Yeah, you take good care of me.
Good morning, church. I hope you're having a blessed day today. Today, we're going to have just a very quick lesson, and we're just going to do some testimonies today. We have taken 2 days off and had no teaching. We had just gotten back from a trip in Maracana. And if you've been with us for any length of time, you know that when we go to Maracana, we stay at a mission base called Project Campus Broncos. And not only do we stay at the base, but we usually preach in the city. We preach at the base and we minister in the city. The last time we went there, we preached only one night, just a one-day conference at a Foursquare church, a quadrangular in Maracana, and it was powerful. Service was 4.5, almost 5 hours. Prayed for over 200 people, 242 exactly, actually. And it was just incredible. The Spirit of God moved in power and miracles, and it was awesome. And so we got invited to come back and do a 3-day conference at this church. And so I'm going to share a couple things, and I hope this blesses you. And I'm going to share some very personal things, and I hope it blesses you. I hope it allows you to grow and to learn. And I pray that it gives you at least some wisdom that we've gleaned from the things that have happened in our lives and in our ministry. A couple things I've noticed, and there's nothing wrong, but a lot of times things that happen don't get shared, and maybe people aren't sharing their testimonies. We're going to talk about that. Or, we do things in ministry, or things happen in the ministry and people don't always talk about them. And so for the next generation, or somebody trying to learn and grow and how to do these things, they're at a severe disadvantage because they don't have anybody to learn from. So there's things that we have learned from others. I've listened to other pastors and missionaries and people that are already with the Lord and people that have been doing it for 50 years. And to hear their wisdom on things that they've been through, that we go through, we can take the appropriate responses and not do it wrong. We can learn from their success, and we can learn from their failure, so that when we're in the situation, we can do better. And so we're going to talk about some of those things. And I pray that everything that we have been through blesses you and grows you in who you are. And we're going to talk about some of these things today. So the first thing I want to share with you is the actual trip. So we've been to this city 4 times now. And the first time was powerful. I got invited to preach at a church in another city because I preached at one of our brothers' churches here in Ecorasi. And so Pastor George took me to another city to preach at a big church. And we met somebody there. And the person we met there said, "Hey, go with us on a trip to this mission base." And so that's how we ended up going the first time. Powerful miracles. God touched the lives of those kids and those people on the base. It really was a blessing. And the second time we went was even more powerful. And we've already given that testimony before about how God provided and the miracles and things of that nature. The third trip was powerful. We took an additional person with us. So now instead of only traveling 4 people, now we're traveling with 5 people. We got somebody else going. God moved in miracles. We did a bunch of new stuff, and we spent pretty much the entire time with the base. And then like I said, we went and preached a conference one night when we were there too. We went on the radio for the first time. Now this trip was just as powerful. The first thing we did, we went on the radio that day. We preached. We taught the kids on the base. My translator ended up teaching some English classes for them. There was a school going on to about language and how to interact with Indians and communication. And so we got to see them teach a little bit, and we did some work with them twice, 2 different days. We did a little bit of ministry work with them to assist them. And then we spent some time on the base, hung out with the people, got some testimonies of some things that have happened. And then we, of course, we preached 3 nights in a row at a church, at a big church. And then we came home after we preached that 3rd night. So it was a very long weekend. We travel a lot back and forth. And of course, when you go into the jungle and you stay in the Amazon, it's hot. And so it makes for some very long days and some very long nights, but glory be to God, we saw some amazing things. Now, our trip did change this time compared to last time, and it made a drastic change because our driver had to change. A car broke down, needed a new driver. So we got a new driver, and the person that came with us is one of our good friends. He's one of my best friends, and he is a worship leader, pastor. His dad pastors a church, and we've been to that church before. Now, it's a miracle how we met because we were in an Uber going to another church. I was preaching the conference in Tocantins, and he was actually our driver, an Uber, to take us to Tocantins. And he interacted with my translator and then got their information, and then contacted us and said, hey, we want you to come preach at our church. And of course, we went down there and preached. We saw God do some miracles. His wife testified that when we were at that church, the power of God was so strong and the presence was so heavy on her life. It blessed her, and it was just amazing. And it was good to have them with us, and his wife and their baby came with us the first day. They spent 1 day with us, little missionary, and it was awesome. And but we did have a good time because he's a worship leader, and I don't always get to travel bringing a worship leader with me. So when we do, it's a blessing because we can start early, and one of the things I enjoy is worship and prayer before the service to set the atmosphere of the room. And that's what we did for days. And it was truly amazing. It truly was a blessing to be able to do that. And so we thank God. We thank God for that. And so we had a great time the entire time. Now, a couple testimonies that came out of this trip, and then a big one, and a little bit of encouragement and a little bit of wisdom to help you in some things. We had a lady come and testify. Now, we got this testimony about 2 days before the trip, but then we had her testify at the church. The last time we were there, she had been diagnosed by the doctor with cancer in her stomach, in her belly. And she was afraid, and she thought she was going to die, and she thought she was going to have, die and leave her kids. And it was bad. But she came to church. And if you remember when I testified right when we came back from that trip, I said there was a woman, the second woman, I grabbed her hand, she hit the floor. Well, it's that lady. I had a word of knowledge from God. I saw it in her. And when I grabbed her hand, I yelled, "Go now," and she hit the floor. And she stayed at the altar for over 2 hours, and she was completely healed. Went back to the doctor. The doctor said it's all gone, completely healed. Glory be to God. And it was amazing. So we started the conference with her testimony and prayed for a bunch of people, ministered healing at the beginning of the service the first 2 days. And we'll get to the 3rd day in just a moment. And then we taught on 1 Kings 17. First day we taught on Elijah. Second day we taught on the widow woman. And the 3rd day we talked on the fact that Elijah called fire down from heaven. So we talked about provision, partnership, and power, and how all 3 of those things go together, and God moving and changing a city and changing hearts and changing people. And it truly was amazing. And the people turned their heart to God. We had many times of intense prayer. The first night we had a big prayer movement, prayed for the people. The second night we had, a prayer time. God moved in power and miracles. And then the 3rd day was very powerful because what happened is we start the service doing prayer and worship, and then we start the service, and then right when it's time, the worship is over, it's my time to preach, the Lord put it on my heart to pray right then. Do the demonstration of power before you preach to tell the people to turn back to the Lord. And so that's what we did. We called a prayer time right then, and almost the entire church was at the altar, and we prayed, and God did miracles, and just one after another. And then the pastor said, call anybody want to accept Jesus. I was like, okay, we can do that right now. And 3 people came to the altar and reconciled with God and gave their heart to the Lord. It was amazing. We got some pictures of that. It truly was awesome. So we had a very, very good time. And then I preached the service, and then, and then we got ready and we took off and came back home. And one of the things that happened, because we are preaching on provision, is that the altar provision is what they called it. What we were talking about how to receive from God is that second day, and the third day specifically, is that we were talking about the fact that the widow woman of Zarephath, Elijah says, give me what you have and give me first. And that is the only way. That's your key into prosperity. That's how you enter into the provision of God, is that you give what you have to take care of somebody that is blessed, and then you receive a blessing because they're a blessed person. Don't just give to anybody, give to a blessed person, and then you receive a blessing. And the widow woman did everything to take care of the man, and she received some of the greatest miracles in the Bible, and also Elijah raised her son from the dead. So this woman stepped into the supernatural blessings and prosperity of God by the way she gave to the prophet. And she gave what she had, and she gave first, because the prophet said, it will never run dry. Have no fear. I've seen God do this before. You will never run out of what you need. And that's the truth. That's what the Bible declares. God will meet your need. And if you are a giver, God gives seed to the sower. And so that's why we always encourage our church. You need to give, and you need to give first if you want to see the supernatural provision of God in your life. And give what you have. So you can go online to blankslateministries.org/give, or you can go into blankslateministries.org/partnership and partner with us today. But I encourage you to give and partner with the ministry, because it's through giving that you enter into the prosperity of God. But one thing that happened, I'm just going to share a little bit of this testimony, is, and I'm not going to say a lot about it because I'm just going to kind of be a little bit vague on it, but some things happened. And by the end, what was received was not enough. And, there's times when you go through life, when things happen, in churches or with people, and it gets you upset. It gets you mad. And sometimes it's unrighteous, and sometimes it's righteous anger. And it's your spirit gets stirred. You get mad about it because something was done that was not right, and it was ungodly. And to be quite frank, it'll piss you off, and you'd be mad about it. And but in your anger and being mad, you got to sin not. You still have to do what God says, and you have to obey the Lord even when you're mad. And I was mad, and I wanted to lash out, and I wanted to handle it myself, and I wanted to give this one person a piece of my mind, and I wanted to take care of it, because it wasn't of God, and it was ungodly. And it's the second time in a month that we've seen something like this happen, and I was pissed off. And but when you're in moments where something's wrong and something bad is happening, you have to step back and take a breath, breathe. Just sit with the Lord. Don't act in anger. When you're mad, just sit down. Do not be slow to speak when you're angry. Don't just say things during those moments, because a lot of times it might be righteous anger, but what you're going to say is not going to be from the Lord. Be quick to extend grace and forgiveness and mercy. And I remember what the Apostle Paul says. It's better to let your brother defraud you than to bring forth division in the church. And I think that's a powerful verse. And so we had this moment, and we get home, and the conference was amazing, but this one situation happened, and it wasn't good. And I got home, and I was talking to my team, and I was talking to the elders of our church, and I was like, I was having a hard time letting it go. And I was, I knew to let it go. I knew not to say anything. I knew to turn it over to the Lord. And we'd already prayed and turned it over to God, and trying to think about what to do and how to make better decisions next time, and things of that nature. And we finally just decided, I decided in my heart, not only would I let it go, but I'd forgive it. I'd never bring it up again. I wouldn't hold it against them. Somebody asked me, would I go back to meet that person again? The answer is yes. I don't stop doing the will of God because of people. I don't let people change who I am. And so, so that's what we did. And the minute that 30 seconds later, 5,000 hayis was given into the church. And that's amazing. It's in those moments when you're mad and you're angry, and the devil's trying to get a foothold to separate and to cause division. And I think it's wisdom to remember that when you face an attack of the enemy, you have to know what he's trying to do. He's trying to stop the will of God. And if the will of God is trying to move in a city and to move in a place and to transform lives, and that's in such a dynamic way, then you need to understand that that's what the enemy's trying to stop. And you can't let him have that foothold, and you can't let him do that. You have to follow the Lord, even when you don't want to, even when it's hard, and you just got to remember, you got to do what God says, no matter what anybody else does. And it's not easy. One thing my translator knows about me is that when I get upset, which is very, very rare, but if something is not of God and it happens and it makes me mad, I won't do anything immediate. I'll sit on it, because I don't want to be slow. I want to be slow to how I speak. I don't want to speak fast and speak out of turn and ruin a relationship or ruin a connection with a church or with a city or with a people over something that's not of God. We just turn that over to the Lord, and we let the Lord handle it, and God will. And you have to know that even if somebody does something wrong, it will never stop God's blessing in your life. Even if it seems like it will, like, well, they took that from me. They said this about me. They did this to me, or they did this to God. It's something that they did to the Lord, and it's wrong. And you just have to know it's coming. The attack of the enemy will happen. John 16:1, I spoke these things in advance so that you would not be offended. So you have to know that these things happen in life. And then you just have to make a decision ahead of time. I'm not going to be offended. I'm going to stay in love. I'm going to stay in forgiveness. And at the end of the day, God will always do what God needs to do in my life, despite what anybody else does. And we just thank the Lord for that. We're going to go ahead and stop here for today. I just hope that testimony blesses you. I know it's very vague. I'm not going to go into the details, but I just want you to understand that we have faced tremendous attacks of the enemy on our travels, at other churches, people, pastors, family members, people here in Brazil, people there in America. I mean, we've faced so many of these things. We had it happen here in Brazil. We've had it happen in Chicago. We had it happen before I even moved to Chicago. We've seen so many things happen in our lives, and we just stay in love, stay in forgiveness, and we just believe that God will fix all situations in Jesus' name. Church, I bless you. God bless you, and we will see you tomorrow.
The sparrow's not worried about tomorrow or the troubles to come. The lily's not thinking about the seasons, the drought or the flood. The tree that's planted by the water isn't fazed by the fire. So why should I be? take good care of me. You take good care of me. You know what I need before I even ask a thing. And you hold me in your hands with the kindness that never ends. I'm carried in your love no matter what the future brings. Yeah, you take good care of me. The sun's not worried about the winter, 'cause soon it will pass. The light's not thinking